In my past life, Lynna hesitated and wavered between me and her frail childhood friend. She eventually decided to leave it to fate, writing 2 lots and planning to determine her future husband by drawing one. When she drew the childhood friend's lot, she tearfully said she couldn't bear to part with me. I've always been soft-hearted, so in the end, I took care of her as a friend for the rest of my life. On her deathbed, she smiled and revealed a secret to me. It turned out that both lots had the childhood friend's name written on them. She also said it was unfair to me, but she had no regrets and promised to make it up to me in the next life. After she passed away, I fell into a deep melancholy and followed her not long after. Opening my eyes again, I had somehow returned to the day she was about to draw lots. This time, I directly pressed down on her hand. The noisy sounds around me, as if filtered through a thick layer of water, buzzed dully in my ears. I snapped my eyes open, and the glaring crystal lights made me feel a bit dizzy. The air was thick with the cloying sweetness of expensive champagne and the intense fragrance of Damascus roses. I knew this scent well, it was the signature aroma of my engagement banquet with Lynna. My eyes slowly focused, and I could clearly see the woman standing before me. Lynna was dressed in a pristine white haute couture gown, its hem adorned with fine diamonds that sparkled dazzlingly under the lights. Her eyes were red-rimmed, filled with pitiful tears, as she looked at me with a pleading gaze. In her right hand, she tightly clutched 2 neatly folded slips of paper. Standing beside her was Gavin, pale-faced and occasionally letting out a low cough. Gavin was her childhood sweetheart, the one she could never let go of in her lifetime. I looked down at my own hands, feeling the warmth and strength emanating from my fingertips. I was clearly dead, having died 3 months after Lynna passed away. It was exhaustion and prolonged depression that took my life. Yet I had been reborn, returning to the very beginning of this absurd lottery game. On this day in my past life, Lynna, in front of all our relatives and friends, tearfully said she simply couldn't choose between me and Gavin. She said she loved me, but couldn't bear to abandon Gavin, who had been frail and sickly since childhood and had only her to rely on. So she came up with this method of leaving it to fate. She wrote 2 lots, and whoever she drew, she would marry. In my past life, I stood there like a fool, my heart in turmoil, waiting for fate to deliver its verdict. When she opened the slip of paper with Gavin's name on it, I felt like my entire world had collapsed. But even so, when she cried and threw herself into my arms, saying she couldn't bear to part with me, I still gave in. As an inexplicable confidant, I stayed by her and Gavin's side for an entire lifetime. I paid Gavin's exorbitant medical bills, propped up Lynna's company, and even never married for my entire life. It wasn't until she was on her deathbed that I learned the truth about those 2 lots. Shane, actually, I cheated back then. Both lots had Gavin's name written on them. I know this isn't fair to you, but I couldn't live without Gavin, and I don't regret it. If there's a next life, I'll make it up to you and repay everything I owe you. The smug, almost triumphant smile on her face as she lay dying became the final nightmare of my past life. Now, watching her raise both hands again, putting on a pained expression and closing her eyes as if ready to draw lots, I only feel my stomach churning, utterly disgusted. Shane, Gavin, I'm sorry, I really don't know what to do, so let fate decide. Lynna said with a sob, while some of the surrounding guests showed sympathy, and others were just waiting to see the drama unfold. She took a deep breath, her fingers trembling, about to pull out a slip of paper from her left hand. Just as her fingertips were about to touch the paper, I suddenly reached out and firmly grabbed her wrist. Lynna froze, opening her tear-filled eyes and staring at me in shock. Gavin also stopped coughing, a flicker of panic and gloom passing through his eyes. Shane, what are you doing? Lynna's voice trembled slightly. I stared coldly at the face I had once loved to death, slowly releasing my grip. I'm not drawing lots anymore. My voice was so calm that even I was a bit surprised. What? Lynna seemed not to understand my words, asking back blankly. I stepped back, putting some distance between us, and glanced at her and Gavin. I said, I'm not drawing this lot. I'm out of this game. Don't put yourself through this anymore. Just marry Gavin. I wish you a lifetime of happiness." When I said that, the entire banquet hall fell so silent that you could hear a pin drop. Lynna stared at me, the color draining from her face in an instant, turning it deathly pale. Lynna's lips trembled slightly, as if she couldn't believe what she had just heard. In her heart, I was always the safe harbor that would never leave her. No matter how willful she was, no matter how she wavered between me and Gavin, I would always be there to forgive her. "Shane, what nonsense are you talking about? Today is our engagement party." Lynna snapped back to reality and anxiously reached for my hand, but I sidestepped to avoid her. Her hand froze in midair, her eyes filled with disbelief and a hint of hidden panic. "I'm not talking nonsense. I'm perfectly clear-headed." I looked at her coldly, my tone utterly unruffled. "Since you find it so hard to choose and even want to resort to such an absurd method as drawing lots to decide your marriage, it only proves you don't love me that much. If that's the case, why should I force it?" I turned to look at Gavin, who was staring at me with a very complicated expression. "Gavin is in poor health and can't do without you. You're his only support. You two grew up together and share a deep bond. I, someone who came along halfway, should just step aside." I returned to her, word for word, the very words she had used to comfort and persuade me in my past life. Gavin immediately put on a weak act, clutching his chest and coughing hard. "Shane, don't be like this. Lynna loves you." I'll just step back." As Gavin coughed, he secretly glanced at Lynna's reaction out of the corner of his eye. Sure enough, Lynna immediately supported him with concern, then turned to glare at me angrily. "Shane. You know perfectly well that Gavin can't handle any stimulation, so why are you saying such hurtful things at a time like this? I just want to solve the problem in the fairest way possible, why are you forcing my hand?" I looked at her righteous, self-assured expression and found it utterly ridiculous. Fair. 2 slips of paper with the same person's name written on them, that's what she calls fair. In my past life, I was fooled by this very same act of hers, her grand, self-sacrificing, and seemingly accommodating demeanor, for an entire lifetime. "I'm not forcing you. I'm granting your wish." I straightened my suit cuffs, my tone cold. "Since you think drawing lots is fair, then go ahead and play your little game. I'm done playing along." With that, I turned around without looking back and strode toward the entrance of the banquet hall. The surrounding guests automatically made way for me, all eyes fixed on me. I heard Lynna's anxious shout from behind me. "Shane! If you dare walk out that door today, we're done for good." There was a threat in her voice, her usual tactic. In my past life, I would have obediently turned back the moment she said that. But in this life, I only found her voice grating. I didn't stop walking, didn't even look back. "That's exactly what I want." With those words, I pushed open the door and stepped into the darkness outside. The night breeze was a bit chilly, blowing away the suffocating sweetness that had choked me in the banquet hall. I took a deep breath of fresh air, feeling as if I had finally let out the pent-up frustration of a lifetime. The shackles of my past life were shattered by my own hands at this moment. "Lynna, Gavin, in this life, just torment each other as you please. Let's see how long your so-called earth-shattering love can last without my help." Returning to the apartment I shared with Lynna, I immediately started packing my things. This apartment was fully paid for by me, but to accommodate her feelings, both our names were on the property deed. In my past life, this was our home, but Gavin was like the third owner here. He had his own slippers, his own mug, and spare clothes left behind. Lynna always found various excuses to involve Gavin in our lives. Looking at the sofa in the living room where Gavin had lounged countless times, I felt nothing but disgust. I didn't take much, just my important documents and a few changes of clothes. Those photo albums and couple mugs, once full of memories, I threw them all in the trash. After packing my luggage, I took out my phone and called my parents. "Dad, Mom, the wedding with Lynna is off. Don't prepare anything." On the other end of the line, my parents were stunned into silence for a long time. They had always known that Lynna was torn between me and Gavin, and they had long had reservations about this relationship. It was only because I had loved her so deeply in my past life that they reluctantly agreed to the marriage. "Son, have you finally come to your senses?" "What exactly happened?" my mom asked with concern. I briefly explained what happened at the banquet, without mentioning the rebirth. "Good. Well done. Why should my son suffer such injustice?" my dad said angrily on the phone. "Come home right away, stay at home tonight, and your mom and I will handle the rest with Lynna's family." After hanging up, I was about to leave with my suitcase when the door was suddenly pushed open from the outside, and Lynna rushed in, panting heavily. Her hair was a mess, and her makeup was smudged by tears, looking utterly disheveled. When she saw the suitcase in my hand, her eyes widened, and a genuine panic flashed through them. "Shane. Are you really leaving? You're even giving up on your home?" She rushed over, gripping the suitcase handle tightly, her fingers turning white from the strain. "This is your and Gavin's home, not mine." I coldly brushed her hand away. "What the hell is your problem? I told you, it was a moment of weakness. I just wanted fairness." Lynna broke down and screamed, tears streaming down like broken pearls. "Fairness?" A mocking smile curled at the corner of my mouth. I stared straight into her eyes, my gaze sharp enough to see through her heart. "Lynna, were my name and Gavin's really written on those 2 slips of paper?" Lynna suddenly stopped shouting, her body frozen. Her eyes widened, her lips trembling, unable to speak. In that moment, I saw extreme fear on her face, as if she had been stripped naked and paraded through the streets. The air in the living room seemed to freeze. Lynna stared at me, her face even paler than it had been in the banquet hall. A few meaningless sounds escaped her throat, as if someone had her by the neck. What are you saying, Shane?" "Of course the note had both your names on it." She let out a dry laugh, trying to cover up her panic, but the smile was uglier than a cry. "Is that so?" I sneered, walking toward her. "Since you're so confident, then where's the note? Take it out and open it right in front of me." Lynna instinctively hid her hands behind her back and stumbled backward. "The note. I threw it away. What use would I have for something so useless?" She raised her voice, trying to mask her guilt with anger. Watching her put on this tough front, I only felt that my past self was as blind as a bat. She simply couldn't lie, the slightest probing would expose her. It's ridiculous that I actually believed her flimsy excuses in my past life. "Throw it away if you want. We both know the truth anyway." I averted my gaze, no longer wanting to look at her nauseating face, and gripped the suitcase handle again. "Lynna, stop pretending to be wronged. I'm not falling for it. Since you're so reluctant to let go of Gavin and even cheated to choose him, I'm stepping aside now. You should be happy." I pulled my suitcase toward the door, and Lynna suddenly lunged at me like a madwoman, wrapping her arms tightly around my waist. "No. Shane, don't go. I was wrong, I really was wrong. I was just so afraid of losing Gavin, he's so pitiful, he'd die without me. But I love you. I only did this to give myself some peace of mind." She cried her heart out, tears and snot smearing all over my suit. I frowned in disgust and pried her fingers off one by one. "Your love is too cheap, too disgusting, I can't accept it. Go love your Gavin. I hope you two are stuck together for life and don't go out hurting anyone else." I shoved her hard, and Lynna collapsed onto the floor, staring at me in despair. Without looking back, I walked out of the apartment and slammed the door shut with a bang. With that loud noise, all ties between Lynna and me were severed. Stepping out of the elevator, a light drizzle began to fall, the cold raindrops hitting my face. Yet in my heart, there was an unprecedented sense of calm and freedom. The grudges of the past life have finally come to an end at this moment. Next, I will take back what belongs to me, bit by bit. The next morning, I arrived on time at the company Lynna and I had started together. In my past life, I had built this company from the ground up, while Lynna merely held a nominal title, enjoying the perks of a CEO. Most of the company's profits were secretly taken by her to cover Gavin's medical expenses and living costs. In this life, I will no longer let my hard work become their blood-sucking tool. I went straight to the legal department and had the chief lawyer draft agreements for equity transfer and company division. My demands were simple: either Lynna buys my 60% stake at market price, or the company goes into bankruptcy liquidation, and we go our separate ways. The agreement had just been drafted when Lynna hurriedly pushed open the door of the legal department. She wasn't wearing any makeup today, and her eyes were red and swollen. Clearly, she hadn't slept all night. When she saw the equity split agreement on the table, she looked as if she had been struck by lightning. "Shane, what are you doing? Are you trying to destroy everything we've built?" She rushed over to tear up the agreement, but I grabbed her wrist. "Take a good look. This is a legal property division, not a game." I looked at her coldly, my tone businesslike, devoid of any personal feelings. "You either buy out my shares with cash, or agree to liquidation. There's no other choice." Lynna stared at me in disbelief, as if looking at a stranger. "Shane, have you lost your mind? The company doesn't have that much cash on hand to buy your shares. If you insist on pulling out your investment, the company's cash flow will break immediately, and will go bankrupt." Realizing the gravity of the situation, her tone turned pleading. "That's your problem, not mine." I cut her off. "You've been taking so much money from the company's accounts to support Gavin all this time, why didn't you think about the cash flow then?" Lynna's face instantly turned red, not expecting me to know about her embezzlement of public funds. I was just borrowing it. Gavin's special medicine is too expensive, and I'll pay it back later." She was still making excuses, and I had no patience to listen anymore. Just then, Lynna's phone rang, and Gavin's name appeared on the screen. She wanted to hang up, but after glancing at me, she hesitated and answered. Gavin's weak and reproachful voice came through the phone, clearly audible in the quiet office. "Lynna, why aren't you at the hospital yet? The doctor said the hospitalization fees need to be paid, and I want to have that seafood porridge from the south side of town today." I watched Lynna's awkward expression, a mocking smile curling at the corner of my mouth. "Did you hear that? Your first love is urging you to pay up." I tossed the pen in front of her, my voice as cold as ice. "Sign it. Once you do, you'll have time to attend to your Gavin." In the end, Lynna didn't sign. She left in a daze. But I didn't give her a chance. I had the lawyer apply to the court for compulsory liquidation. At the same time, I left the company with my core team. Without my connections and resources, the company was just an empty shell. Within just half a month, it collapsed. Clients terminated their contracts, and the penalties piled up like a mountain. I, on the other hand, registered a new company as quickly as possible and started my career anew. That afternoon, I was reviewing reports in the president's office of my new company when my assistant knocked and walked in. "President, there's a woman named Lynna downstairs who wants to see you. She says, she's your ex-fiancé." The assistant had an odd expression on her face, probably because she had seen how miserable Lynna looked now. I walked to the window and looked down. It was pouring outside, and Lynna stood at the door without an umbrella, completely soaked. Her hair clung to her face in strands, and her expensive suit was covered in mud, making her look like a stray dog. In my past life, if I had seen her caught in the rain like that, I would have been heartbroken, rushing down with a dry towel to hold her. But now, watching her shiver in the rain, I felt nothing at all. In fact, I found it a little amusing. "Let her come up," I said to my assistant. A few minutes later, Lynna was escorted into the office by security. As soon as she stepped in, a trail of muddy footprints stained the expensive carpet. She looked up at me, her eyes filled with exhaustion, despair, and deep regret. "Shane." As soon as she spoke, her voice was hoarse, as if it had been scraped across sandpaper. "Get to the point. My time is valuable." I sat in the chair and didn't even have anyone pour her a glass of hot water. Lynna bit her pale lips, tears and rain streaming down her face together. Shane, please, lend me some money. The company went bankrupt, and I owe a lot in breach of contract penalties. Gavin's condition has worsened, and he needs surgery immediately. I really have no other way. She spoke as she knelt down. As long as you lend me the money, I'll do anything. I'll be your servant for life. I looked at Lynna kneeling on the ground, recalling the smug smile on her face at the end of her life in my past life. In that life, she used a lottery to deceive me out of my feelings and money for a lifetime, and even in death, she felt it was only right. Now she's merely reaping what she sowed. Why is she acting so wronged? Lynna, do you think that by crying and kneeling, I'll soften up like I used to? I stood up, walked over to her, and looked down at her from above. You came to me to borrow money to treat Gavin. Do you take me for a philanthropist, or am I just born a fool? What do the two of you think I am, an ATM? My voice grew louder, and the icy tone made Lynna tremble all over. Lynna looked up, her face covered in tears, her eyes filled with both pain and confusion. Shane, you weren't like this before. In the past, even a slight frown from you would break my heart. I know I was wrong. I shouldn't have embarrassed you at the engagement party. I truly know I was wrong. She tried to grab my pant leg, but I kicked her away. You weren't wrong for embarrassing me at the engagement party. You were wrong for treating your selfish and malicious scheming as something. I crouched down, looking into her terrified eyes, and said word by word. Lynna, do you think I don't know the secret behind those 2 sticks? At these words, Lynna's body froze, and her breath stopped. Her eyes widened, pupils constricted, as if she had seen something horrifying. What are you saying, what secret? Her teeth chattered, and her voice trembled violently. On that note you wrote, it was all Gavin's name, wasn't it? I watched her face turn pale, feeling a sense of vengeful satisfaction. You had already decided to choose him, but you couldn't bear to let go of me, your free labor and ATM. So you staged that drawing lots act, trying to make me willingly stay as your blood bag. Lynna, dare you say that wasn't what you were thinking? My words cut through her mask like a sharp knife. Lynna broke down, covering her face with both hands, crying in despair. How do you know? How could you possibly know? She muttered, her mental defenses crumbling. The shame of having her supposedly clever plan seen through by me drove her to lose her composure. It doesn't matter what I know. What matters is that from now on, there is only enmity between us, no gratitude. I stood up, grabbed a tissue to wipe my shoes, and threw it in her face. Get out. Don't dirty my carpet. If you want money, go sell your blood, your kidney, or your body. Don't ever show up in front of me again, or I'll make your life even harder. I pressed the intercom to call security. Lynna was dragged out like a pile of mud, her cries echoing down the hallway until they faded away. I sat back in my chair, staring at the gloomy sky outside. This rain was perfect, it washed away the filth. Lynna, this is just the beginning. You owe me, and I'll make you pay with a lifetime of despair. A few months later, my new company had established itself in the industry, even larger than in my previous life. But Lynna and Gavin's lives had fallen into hell. Gavin couldn't afford surgery, and his condition worsened. Though he survived, he was paralyzed. Lynna was drowning in debt, sold off all her luxury goods and jewelry, and even lost her place to live. They could only rent a dark, damp basement in a shantytown. I heard all this gossip from my nosy assistant, who told it like a joke. Boss, you wouldn't believe it, Gavin's temper is terrible now. He hits and yells at Lynna all the time. I heard a few days ago, Lynna earned some money cleaning outside and bought him a bowl of pork rib soup. But Gavin thought it was too bland and threw the hot soup right in her face. Her skin peeled from the burns. The assistant shook her head as she spoke, her eyes full of schadenfreude. My hand holding the coffee paused for a moment, then I took a sip of black coffee as if nothing had happened. The bitter taste spread in my mouth, but I felt very comfortable inside. In my past life, Gavin lived like a dandy on my money, and Lynna was coddled by me, never having to lift a finger. Now, without my protection, their so-called true love has revealed its ugliest side in the face of poverty and illness. Gavin resented Lynna for not being able to bring in money, while Lynna blamed Gavin for being a bottomless pit, dragging her down for life. They were like two poisonous insects trapped in a cesspit, biting and tormenting each other. That evening, I attended a top-tier industry charity gala. The event was held on the top floor of a 5-star hotel, surrounded by elegantly dressed people, with the clinking of glasses filling the air. Wearing a custom-tailored suit and holding a glass of champagne, I chatted with several business tycoons. At that moment, a commotion suddenly broke out in the corner of the hall. "How are you working? Are you blind? Do you even know how much this dress costs? Can you afford to pay for it?" A wealthy woman dripping with jewels shrieked loudly. I looked over and saw a woman in a hotel server uniform kneeling on the ground, frantically wiping the hem of the wealthy woman's dress with a towel. That woman's hair was a tangled mess, she was as thin as a skeleton, and her arms were covered in bruises. When she looked up in panic to apologize, I recognized her face. It was Lynna. Once a proud and privileged young lady, she was now more pitiful than a stray dog. Half of her face bore a noticeable burn scar, patchy with red and white, quite frightening to look at. Just then, Lynna's gaze cut through the crowd and met mine. In that moment, time seemed to stand still. Lynna knelt on the ground, holding a dirty towel in her hands, staring blankly at me. Her eyes held shock, humiliation, despair, and a faint, almost frantic glimmer of hope. She looked at me in all my glory, at the wealthy and powerful people around me. She might have been thinking that once, she too stood by my side, envied by others. I looked at her calmly, my expression unchanged, as if I were looking at a stranger. I didn't rush over to help her like I did in my past life, nor did I mock her. I simply raised my champagne glass and gently swirled it in her direction. Then I turned my head and continued discussing the billion-dollar investment project with the CEO. This contemptuous gesture became the final straw that broke Lynna. I heard a scream behind me. Lynna, like a madwoman, pushed aside the wealthy lady and crawled toward me. "Shane! Shane, save me! I can't go on, I really can't go on." She tried to lunge at me, but the security guards held her down. "Let me go. I am your CEO's fiancée. Let me go." She struggled, her hair a tangled mess like a madwoman's. The people around her looked at her with disgust, whispering among themselves. "Who is this crazy woman? How did she get in? They say she's Shane's fiancée. How could Shane ever fancy a woman who looks like a beggar? I heard she's just a waitress with a screw loose. Get her out of here, don't ruin the party for everyone." I watched coldly as Lynna was pinned to the ground, her face pressed against the floor as she desperately called out my name. "Mr. Shane, I'm terribly sorry for letting this lunatic disturb you. We'll handle it immediately." The hotel manager rushed over, sweating profusely, to apologize. "It's fine. I don't know her. Just handle it according to the rules," I said calmly, my voice not loud, but Lynna could definitely hear it. The words, "I don't know her," pierced Lynna's heart like a knife. She stopped struggling, her eyes vacant and lifeless, as the security guards dragged her out of the banquet hall like a dead dog. After the banquet ended, I walked out of the hotel and headed for the car. By the trash bin on the side of the hotel, I spotted a figure huddled in the shadows. Lynna sat in the dirty water, hugging her knees, trembling all over. In front of her was a broken wheelchair, occupied by a grim-faced Gavin. "You slut! I told you to go in and find some leftovers, and you dared to seduce a man." Gavin grabbed a wooden stick from who knows where and beat Lynna like a madman. Though paralyzed, his upper body was strong, and each strike landed heavily. Lynna neither dodged nor begged for mercy, like a soulless puppet, letting the stick hit her body. "Kill me. Gavin, kill me, and we'll go to hell together." She muttered numbly, staring blankly ahead. Gavin, exhausted from beating, threw the stick to the ground and spat viciously. "Want to die? Not so easy. You owe me a debt you can never repay in this lifetime. You'll be my dog for the rest of your life. I sat comfortably in the back seat of the Maybach, coldly watching this farce unfold outside the window. In my past life, Lynna said on her deathbed that she didn't regret choosing Gavin. I wonder now, facing this man who abused her, if she would still say she has no regrets. Let's go. I withdrew my gaze and said to the driver. The black sedan drove into the night, leaving the two behind. I thought that was the end for Lynna and Gavin, but I never expected Lynna to go mad. A few days later, I received a call from the hospital. Hello, is this Mr. Shane? This is the emergency department of the hospital. A patient named Lynna has been in a serious car accident. The only emergency contact in her phone is you. She is now in critical condition and keeps calling your name. Can you come? I held the phone, silent for a moment, a cold smile curling at the corner of my mouth. Doctor, you've dialed the wrong number. I don't know this person. With that, I hung up and blocked the number. I don't know how Lynna got into the car accident. Maybe she was distracted and got hit by a car, or maybe she couldn't bear the torment and committed suicide. But none of that has anything to do with me anymore. In my past life, I stayed by her side in the hospital for her entire life, watching her take her last breath. In this life, she can just lie in her hospital bed and wait to die. But I never expected Lynna to survive. And what she went through was a torment even crueler than death. A month later, I received a court summons. Lynna actually sued me for abandonment and failure to fulfill support obligations. Seeing the summons, I couldn't help but laugh in anger. What right does she have to sue me? As my ex-fiancée? Or as my wife from a past life? Out of curiosity, I brought my lawyer to the pretrial mediation. In the mediation room, I saw Lynna again. She was sitting in a wheelchair, one leg in a cast, so thin she was nothing but bones. Her eyes were no longer vacant and numb, they were eerily fanatical. She saw me enter and was so excited that she tried to stand up from her wheelchair, only to fall to the ground. Shane! You finally came to pick me up. I knew you wouldn't abandon me. She lay on the floor, reaching out to grab my leather shoes, crying her heart out. I frowned and stepped back as the lawyer pulled her away. Ma'am, please mind the occasion, the lawyer warned sternly. Lynna acted as if she hadn't heard, staring straight at me with a look of obsession and regret. Shane, I remember. I remember everything. In our past life, you took care of me for a lifetime, you loved me so much. I was wrong, I truly know I was wrong. I shouldn't have said those hurtful things to you before I died. Heaven made me have that car accident to restore my past life memories so I could make it up to you. She shouted incoherently, tears and snot streaming down her face, both pitiful and frightening. I watched her quietly, understanding what had happened. The car accident didn't take her life, but it left her mind in chaos. On the brink of death, she awakened memories of her past life. She remembered how good I had been to her in that life, remembered the stable and prosperous life she had lived. Comparing the memories of 2 lifetimes, the gap between the harsh reality and the happiness of her past life was too great, and her mental world collapsed. She had gone mad. She stubbornly believed that as long as she admitted her mistake and made amends, I would forgive her just like in the past life and take her back home. Lynna, did you hit your head? What nonsense are you talking about? I looked down at her, my eyes filled only with disgust. We were never even married. You left with Gavin at the engagement banquet, have you forgotten? Lynna shook her head frantically, tears flying everywhere. No. That's not true. I was just confused at the time. Shane, you've been reborn too, haven't you? That's why you backed out at the engagement banquet. You still blame me for deceiving you in the past life, don't you? I swear, in this life, I will only love you. Gavin is a devil, he hits me, he curses me. I've suffered enough at his hands. Isn't this karma? Can you forgive me? Let's start over. I'll give you children, I'll cook for you. She begged humbly, lowering herself to the dust. Watching her like this, I felt that my past self was too pitiful. I spent my whole life loving her, yet deep down she was someone who bullied the weak and feared the strong, selfish and self-serving. In my past life, I put her on a pedestal, and she took my love for granted, even daring to humiliate me with a signature. In this life, I trample her underfoot, and she clings to me like a dog, crying to make it up to me. A love that comes too late is cheaper than grass. Lynna, listen carefully. I crouched down and whispered in her ear. That's right, I have memories of my past life. Lynna's eyes lit up, as if grasping at a lifeline. But my next sentence sent her straight to hell. Precisely because I remember everything from my past life, I find you utterly repulsive. On your deathbed in your previous life, you said you would make it up to me in the next. Now your retribution has arrived, the suffering you endure in this life is your compensation to me. I want you to carry the happy memories of your past life into the hell of this one, suffering clearly and consciously for the rest of your days. Lynna's eyes were wide open, bloodshot, as if they might burst. Her mouth gaped, strange sounds coming from her throat, unable to speak. Overwhelming despair and pain consumed her, her body convulsing, foam forming at the corners of her mouth. Doctor. Call a doctor. The patient is having an episode. The mediator, terrified, ran out to summon help. I stood up, straightened my suit, and watched Lynna's convulsing form coldly. This was the last time I would see her. The court case ended with Lynna being sent to a psychiatric hospital. She had completely lost her mind. According to the caregiver, Lynna sat by the window every day, talking to herself in the air. She would sometimes call out tenderly, "Shane, what are we eating today?" and other times scream in terror, "Gavin, don't hit me." Trapped between the fantasies of her past life and the nightmares of her present, she could no longer wake up. As for Gavin, without Lynna as his punching bag and cash cow, he was soon kicked out of the basement by the landlord. Paralyzed in bed, penniless and alone, he froze to death under a bridge on a cold winter night. It was said that when his body was found, it had been gnawed beyond recognition by stray dogs. I was picking out a diamond ring for my newlywed wife when I heard this news. My wife's name is Sylvia, the heiress of a conglomerate that partners with my company. She is well educated, gentle, and kind, but most importantly, she has eyes only for me. She won't waver between me and someone else, nor will she take my sacrifices for granted. Our love is equal and mutual, built on respect. Shane, does this style look good? Sylvia raised her hand, and the diamond on her ring finger sparkled with happiness under the light. It looks good. Anything you wear looks good. I held her hand and gently kissed the back of it. Stepping out of the jewelry store, the sun was shining brightly and the breeze was gentle. I took a deep breath of fresh air, feeling completely relaxed and at ease. The grudges of my past life were like a nightmare, now finally dissipated. I no longer hate Lynna, nor do I miss Gavin. To me, they are nothing but two meaningless corpses, not even worthy of my resentment. Holding Sylvia's hand, I stride forward into our future. This time, I have finally grasped the happiness that truly belongs to me.